We got a special guest on the program, Phil Steele. This guy has a preview magazine for college football that is unmatched in the industry. Phil, I mean, college football year in and out, it's your life. We were talking earlier, how much time do you spend on this magazine in the offseason getting it ready?
It starts the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and to June the 2nd, I put in 2,000 hours personally, and then my staff of 10 to 15 people put another 10,000 hours assisting me on the magazine. So over 12,000 hours invested.
I mean, how many years have you been doing this now? I mean, I remember a magazine growing up when I was a kid, so I can imagine this has been going for a little bit.
22 years.
Wow.
And we started that first magazine, was black and white on newsprint. It was about 188 pages, if you can believe that. Now we're up to 352 pages, and it's the one that's used by everybody.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Michigan and Michigan State in a little bit, but college football in general, this year, it seems like every year the excitement, the hype is that much up more. Are you seeing that as well with this year, this excitement?
I'm going to say college football is the second best sport in the country. NFL won. College football is now overtaken as the number 2 sport in the country. It's a fast riser.
It is a fast riser. Michigan State has been a fast riser as of late. Let's start with them. You got them one spot behind Michigan in your overall, and I don't believe you have them winning the East Division, that means. So what is it about this Michigan State team, as you see it, that's going to be their biggest problem, biggest hurdle this season?
The inexperience level. They're the second least experienced team in the Big Ten. But here's the thing about Michigan State. Last year they entered the season number 5. They rose to number 2. That chip on the shoulder, it wasn't there. And they had some close games against Rutgers, Purdue, games they had no business being close. But when they were the underdog or the lower-ranked team, they played their best ball. Now this year, I like what they've got at quarterback with Tyler Connor. They've solid at running back. I like the defense, maybe one of D'Antonio's best defenses. And the schedule, they get Michigan and Ohio State at home, and that chip is placed firmly back on the shoulder. I'm picking them third. Everybody in the country is picking them third. They're not top 10. I'm saying that they're a legitimate candidate to win the East this year because of that factor.
So you're kind of playing into it a little bit then, if the media hype is because people look to your magazine as something, but I look at that Michigan State team as similar to the Rose Bowl year. You remember that year? Yes. Going into that year, they had a great defense, maybe a quarterback in Connor Cook who ended up being what he ended up being, but do you see that kind of, and they have to go to Notre Dame and play, same script, almost rewriting itself?
Yeah, and Tyler O'Connor, I think, is going to have a good season. Probably pretty close to what Connor Cook did last year. And I think overall, when you look at Michigan State, they're a team that, you know, when they play those games against Michigan and Ohio State, they're right back where they want to be as the underdog, and that's going to make them very dangerous.
Michigan, they lost in that last second play to Michigan State, got blown out by Ohio State last year, but still a successful campaign winning Florida in the bowl game. You have them one spot ahead of Michigan State, but still behind Ohio State, so that probably means you're not picking them to win the East either.
Yeah, now Michigan is a team that on October the 27th, you're going to see this team number 2 or number 3 in the country. They're going to be 7-0. They have 7 dominating wins. They've had a top 10 defense the last 2 years. This year they have a top 5 defense. I like both quarterbacks, John O'Korn and Wilton Spate. In fact, Spate, I talked to NFL guys this preseason. They're looking at him as a possible draft pick next year if he has a good year, if he wins the job. It's a good, great battle. They're solid at running back. Receiver, J.U. Cheston, if he's healthy, look out. But their final 5 games, at Michigan State's included in that, at Iowa, and at Ohio State. It's going to be tough to win those 3 games on the road, and that's why I didn't pick them to win the East.
To be fair, though, Michigan State did have that tough schedule last year, going to Michigan and to Ohio State.
True.
And did get it done. So it's not impossible, Michigan fans out there thinking that, that they can get it done. We've seen it happen once before. Jim Harbaugh effect. He clearly is the #1 reason why this Michigan program is where it is right now.
I think Harbaugh and a good defense. Now, remember, they had a good defense the year prior to Harbaugh. They were number 10 in the country. But I think he's just changed the attitude there completely. And I love the fact that he likes to win with cruelty. You know, he goes out there and they go out and dominate teams. 3 straight shutouts last year. Very impressive. Don't let up. And even in the bowl game, they had Florida down. Florida was beat. And guess what? They didn't let up that entire second half. I like that out of them.
What about Jabril Peppers? I mean, this is a guy that's nationally talked about, raved about as being one of those freak athletes, if you will. We saw some flashes of that, both sides and special teams last year. Are we going to see even more this year?
He could end up being the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I think at the linebacker position he's perfect because he's got the physicality to be in there, make the tackles, penetrate, get the sacks, and yet he's a great coverage guy. So he's a perfect nickel linebacker that everybody's using at the strong side linebacker spot, and you're going to see him on offense, kick returns. You're going to see him all over the place. So Peppers is clearly a first-round draft pick next year.
So clearly you're picking Ohio State to come out of the East because of their talent factor, but they only have 6 returners too. So are they the least experienced team? I know you mentioned Michigan State was the second least experienced team in the Big Ten. Is Ohio State the least?
They're not just the least experienced team in the Big Ten, they're the least experienced team in the country. Wow. Number 128 out of 128. And generally, now keep in mind, they've had the #1 recruiting class in the Big Ten 5 straight years. Yep. So the talent is there. I mean, you line these guys up and you're picking them in most of your pickup games. The experience is not. I think they take their lumps early. A loss at Oklahoma. They also play Wisconsin, Penn State on the road. May take a loss in there. But when they play their biggest 2 games of the year, it's at the end of the year. They're playing Michigan and Michigan State, and they get Michigan at home. And that factor, by that time, when you've played 10 games, you're no longer an inexperienced player. In fact, you'd be counted as a returning starter the next year. That factor has me picking Ohio State to win the East this year.
Those Big Ten schedule makers must have something up their sleeve because, last 2 weeks of the season when the drama needs to unfold the most in the conference's biggest 2 games. All right, I do not want to forget about that thing that we call the West Division in the Big Ten. Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, 3 teams that, do you think this is a year maybe with the East being so dominant that they beat up on each other so badly? You kind of talked about Ohio State maybe taking a lump or 2, Michigan State, Michigan maybe losing in there. Is this time when the West can maybe reclaim the Big Ten, or is it just out of the question?
It's possible, but if Ohio State wins the East, they'll be playing their best ball at the end of the year. They'll have the most talented team and have experience. So I would still pick Ohio State to win it. But I'll make the case for Iowa. And let me first of all talk about Wisconsin, Nebraska quickly. Wisconsin's a team that has avoided Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State the last 3 years. Guess what? All 3 are on the schedule, and they play them in 3 straight weeks. Yeah. What you're going to see out of Wisconsin, they're probably going to have a better run game. Last year, they only ran for 156 yards per game. Very atypical for Wisconsin. So they're a better team, but it's not going to show in the record because of the schedule. Nebraska's a team that last year lost a lot of close games. A lot of games they lost in the final second of the game. They have 5 games where if you change just 1 play, they would have won. They could have been an 11-2 team last year. I also think they learned something in the bowl. If they run the football like they did against UCLA and don't have 21 interceptions like they did last year, they're going to be a better team. So I think they are the main contender. But I think Iowa's an even better team than they were last year. Now, it might not show on the record because last year's Iowa team was fortunate to get to 12-0. Yep. This year's team has a better defense. You look at them up front with Budgeta and Johnson at the defensive tackle spot, Josie Jewell at linebacker, and then they've got King at the cornerback spot who just happened to win the Thorpe Award. And believe it or not, when I talked to NFL scouts this year, I had Beathard about the 10th or 15th quarterback for the draft. I've got him number 6 now after talking to the scouts. So they like him. The Beathard's an NFL caliber guy. The offense will be better, not great, but with that defense and special teams. And then the thing I love about Iowa is the schedule. There are 5 Big Ten road games come against teams that went a combined 10 and 30 last year. They get all the big boys at home, including Michigan, including Nebraska, including Wisconsin. So their schedule is tailor-made to potentially run the table. Their toughest road trip is at Penn State this year. And so when you look at Iowa, they're a team that's better than last year, and they're my pick to win the West.
All right, there it is. So you have who winning the Big Ten then? Ohio State over Iowa?
I'm going with Ohio State to beat Iowa because Ohio State would be playing their best ball at the end of the year. And I will say this, if Michigan and Michigan State played Ohio State early in the year, I would have gone with one of those 2 guys to win the East.
Really?
Yes, I think the experience level is that big.
The schedule maker. No, this guy, this preview magazine, you got to go check it out. It's available pretty much anywhere and everywhere you can get a magazine. Phil Steele, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.